For texture painting in Blender, the first prerequisite is a UV map. So if you go into edit mode and just use Smart Unwrap, because it's so congested, you can increase the island distance slightly to stop them overlapping. You'll see that is and then workspace at the top, switch to texture paint, which automatically goes to texture paint mode. And we're going to use material mode. But the first thing, rather than painting onto a specific texture, and in material mode we can then select the different contributions to the material. So choose base colour and it will give you the options to create a texture, and click on alpha. We don't need an alpha for this. We can start painting, but choose a base colour which is a kind of approximately skin colour for this. And you'll see in the UV, which has been unwrapped on the left, you can see that the colours filled the whole of the texture there. One useful thing to know when texture painting is that if you select vertices in edit mode, those effectively are masked positively, so only the selected vertices will be painted. And at this point it's a good idea to select some components that we can quickly switch from one mask to another. So we're going to use the eyes, set the eyes as a vertex group, create a vertex group called eyes. One for the hair. We'll do one for a kind of shirt and shorts, which we'll call suit, and then everything else is going to be skin. So we select put X-ray on, you'll be able to see, make sure you don't leave some vertices at the back of the mannequin. So everything else is the skin. So now if we select the suit vertex group, we can see everything else is greyed out. And now we can paint, choose a colour, paint with a paintbrush. We can also select a texture, and this texture will change the strength of the colour that we've selected at the top. We'll see if you go into the texture settings, you can actually use a colour ramp and change the opacity. And then for the hair, we're going to use a different texture to create a kind of wiggly pattern. And we notice there's some gaps where we didn't paint. You need to keep rotating the object around, just checking where the painting's going. We could paint. It's actually very difficult to paint skin, but you could paint skin on here. Now we're going to use a feature which is on the material displacement. So on the output node of the material, we can affect the displacement like we did in one of the earlier chapters. And although this doesn't actually displace the surface, it treats the surface as if it was displaced. So it changes the reflections and shadows using a normal map. There is a normal map input, which is the more usual way to do this in the shader, but this is like a hybrid. So you see it's a very exaggerated displacement there. So we need to go into the shader nodes, which have been automatically generated, and we input an intermediate node to change the value so we can scale the strength of the displacement. This is similar to what we did in the very first chapter. For the suit, we're going to make like a puffer jacket. You see we have to change the rotation of the texture to make the lines horizontal. This is all only very approximate. So it's just to give you an idea of the kinds of things you can do. We could have created another vertex group for the shorts on the top, but we can just change the selection in edit mode. And we need to remember we're drawing onto the right material. So we're drawing onto the base colour material and not drawing onto the displacement material, which is you need to keep an eye on it. Now for the eyes, you'll see this is a problem really with using the sculpted mesh, that when we unwrap it, the eyes are very small, and when we try to draw on the eyes, the resolution, the number of pixels per millimetre of eye is very low, and we get a very blocky and poor effect. And the same also applies to the face. You can see on the UV on the left that the face is very small compared with the less critical parts of the body. And this is something we'll cover in a later chapter, how to re-topo using a good topology rather than this mishmash, and how to unwrap correctly and get the UV map. You can see there's just above the right eye and below the right eye there's a bit of overlapping mesh from the UV unwrapping, so there's a little brown bit that should be skin coloured. So we can select the faces in the UV and move them and change the scale in order to get slightly more resolution. We can draw on the image on the left, or we draw on the model, which is more intuitive. Notice we can change the fall off of the brush, and again this is much better to do not in perspective view but in orthographic view, and then we can get the details of the eye the same size from the left and right eye and without any perspective distortion or parallax. You see it's still not very good. We need a much higher resolution image for the eye, because it's something that our perception is drawn towards when we perceive even slight irregularities. Slight bit of realism. We in the material we've added a subsurface colour just to give a slight glow, and the other thing is we can change the smoothness and other properties to make it more skin-like. We'll see in later chapters that there are much better ways to do this, and it's much better to use a photograph rather than attempting to draw a face, unless we want a cartoon-like character. And we finally pose the character and render it.